Hear ya.
You're on mute.
All right, let's try
There.
that. Okay, how about now?
Good.
Oh, it sounds good.
That's much better.
All right, sorry about that, guys. All right,
No worries.
let's get this meeting underway. um, I'm calling the meeting to order at 6:17 p.m. Do I have any volunteer who'd be willing to take the minutes, since normally that would be what I would be doing, but obviously don't really want to chair it and take the minutes. All right, well, hearing none.
I'll take some notes. How's that?
Thanks, MJ. And then
I'll
you can
take
give them
notes,
to.
and we also have to ask if anyone is recording the
Right.
meeting, because I think Helen from the Bourne Enterprise is on. She may be recording.
Okay, is anyone recording the meeting? Please state your name for the record.
Yes, Helen Sievert from Bourne Enterprise. Thank you, MJ. Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, Helen. Okay. All right. Thanks, MJ. Then I can do the minutes from your notes. Okay. Is there any public comment? Would anyone like to make a public comment? Okay. Hearing none. We have the minutes of December 10th, 2025 to approve.
Were they distributed?
They were distributed. Yeah, they were. But if none of you guys have seen them, we'll put this off. Has anybody had a chance to read those minutes? They were distributed with the agenda that Maria distributed a few days ago. Okay.
Yeah, I had a chance to read through them.
Okay. Well, I don't know if if the rest of you haven't seen them, we're going to have to put them off because we won't even have a quorum. Okay, let's do that. We'll put these minutes off till the next
I was
meeting.
looking under getting them from you, so I didn't look under Maria. So yeah,
Okay.
like finding stuff to look at. I actually, Matt, did you have any issue with them? Did you think they were accurate? I mean,
Yeah, I thought they seemed pretty aligned with my notes. I mean, a little tough being April now. But and
True enough, Matt.
only because sorry.
Right.
But no issues that I saw from my notes.
Okay. Well, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Yeah, I'm so moved.
Thanks, Matt. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Further discussion than we've already had? All right. In that case, I think I have to do a roll call. Right? Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Barbara,
Here.
Matt,
Yes.
MJ,
Yes.
and I vote yes. 4-0. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Update on the Rail 2 Trail project. There's really not much to say except that obviously we haven't met for a while. The town of Falmouth Select Board voted 4-1 to support removal of the track and construction of the Bourne Rail Trail as a rail to trail project. That was obviously significant. That has been publicized and, of course, communicated to the governor in a letter from the Falmouth Select Board. There's been no response as far as I know. There really hasn't been, the Friends of the Bourne Rail Trail have done a lot of publicity around that, including also continuing to gather signature postcards for the governor's office, expressing the town's interest, citizens' interest in pulling up the track. Nothing has really happened. Gus Pickford, who's been assigned from Mass DOT to this project, he never got back to me. I have written him again, and he told me they're still having conversations and he'd get back to me, and now I haven't heard from him for another month. So there really isn't much to report. There has been quite a bit of conversation on the part of people involved to suggest that the town of Bourne being the town by far most impacted by the bridges project, that it would be a extremely reasonable mitigation for the town, especially given the anticipated closure of the Cape Cod Canal Bikeway for months, if not years, that we pull the track and build the Bourne Rail Trail. That's been communicated to DOT through these various public hearings that have been held. And of course, it's been coupled with the suggestion that if people really believe the track is necessary, now is the time to design it as part of the design of the new bridges, running it off the Cape Cod Canal rail line to the transfer station and or the base or the new transfer station at Bourne. So that's all been advanced, and really nothing's happened. Most of these meetings, none of these meetings, as far as I know, has DOT commented on this idea. That's basically where we are. Happy to answer any questions if anybody has them. If not, we'll move on to the next agenda item.
I just want to say something. I'm not sure if it goes here or someplace else. That, as far as I can tell, there has not been any change to the tip regarding phase one. I could be incorrect about this, but I asked Colleen Medeiros if there had been additional communication from the town, and she basically said that communication had to go between the town and MassDOT.
Right, MJ,
And
excuse me for interrupting you. I had put agenda 6 on the agenda for the express purpose of discussing this.
all right,
So
so
if you don't
I'll hold
mind,
my comments. Let's
let's
reduce
wait
those
until we get
comments. I just,
thanks.
it's part of this,
It
and
is.
it will discuss the tip financing in another agenda item, I guess.
Yeah, well, I think yes, we will, and part of the reason that I say that is because I think one of our responsibilities here is at some point the town has to get back to DOT and the Conservation Commission about what we want to do with phase one. So that's why I put it on the agenda. And again, I mean, we can take it up now, and I'll just move item number 5 to afterwards. Maybe it's
It's fine. I'm sorry. I don't have. I've
It's
recently
okay.
moved, and my printer is not set up, so I am like going between screens to have an agenda that I can read. So
Okay, well, the item 5 is really in some ways related because MJ, you had asked to have on the agenda a future meeting with the select board. As you all know, we did meet with the select board once before, back on February 10th. There was mixed reaction to whether or not we discussed the things we wanted to discuss with the select board, but essentially that meeting revolved mostly around the question of whether this committee should be disbanded. And it was all sort of put on hold, no real decision made. And I don't think Marlene is here, but it's been Marlene's position that I've agreed with, that we are a town administrator committee, not a board committee, and therefore that it would be the town administrator's discretion to disband the committee. But that's why that's why I included another agenda item on discussion of the future of our committee, because we're going to need to decide what we want to do. The question was whether we want to ask again to meet with the select board, because what we did not do is discuss with the select board the status of the project in any detail, or get the select board's recommendation about whether or not we should keep phase one on delay or go back to DOT and tell them we want to reactivate it. So that's why these things are intertwined.
I asked for this agenda item.
You did?
Because back in August, when this committee kind of voted to delay, since that time, we have never had a discussion with the select board about the policy and the next steps. And that is what I think is important. The disbandment of the committee is a total, and I don't want to get into that discussion right now. I want to talk about, do we need to have a conversation with the select board about what we should be doing with this rail trail? And we haven't done that since August. And I think that's a really important discussion. And I think this committee needs to talk about that, whether they think it's an important discussion. Aside from disbandment, this is not disbanding. This is,
Right.
should
No,
this committee have a meeting with the select board to discuss the next steps with the rail trail and what we should be looking at?
Yeah, MJ, I appreciate what you're saying. And I mean, I think the answer is more information for the board, the better. But the last vote that the board took on this matter was to endorse rail to trail, to endorse pulling the track to build the trail. And that was in part, I think, a basis for our decision as a committee to recommend that we delay phase one. As you know, Dave McPherson disagreed with that. And really, I think that was some of the impetus for his resignation, but, also other things. And so I think it's a fair question. And I guess the question is whether or not we would be going back to the select board to say, we're wondering whether you want to change your position on rail to trail. Because if the board's position is rail to trail, then their response to the phase one, I think, is pretty clear, which is we wouldn't do phase one. Having said all that, of course, I don't want to leave Dave's argument off the table, which his position was always that we start building phase one as a rail with trail project, and soon everyone will pivot and we'll get a rail to trail project. So if you see, as I think Dave did, this being the first step to a rail to trail, full trail, then, then presumably you would want to get it off the delay and get it going. But we as a committee had not adopted that position.
I'd like to hear from other members of the committee on what they think.
Me too.
So,
Yep. Go ahead, Barbara. Sure.
so I'm just not sure. Maybe I just don't understand everything. But didn't the town vote to have the bike path? They voted it in.
Yes. Yeah. The select board specifically voted to endorse pulling the track and building the trail.
So if they voted that in, and then you just said Falmouth voted theirs in, right?
Yes. Falmouth recently did endorse pulling the track.
So, because I think some of the problem that people had was that you do phase one and you couldn't do 2, 3, 4. So doesn't that solve the problem if Falmouth said that they do want the tracks? So now I just don't see where the problem lies. I feel like the town's saying we do want the trail, right? So is the problem just if it's rail to trail or no rail?
Can I say something here?
Of course.
So we had a meeting in August, and we were presented with some plans that MassDOT had changed that was pretty much taking over all of the park there, Stackpole Park, and having an exit out to the Grey Gables neighborhood. And people were not really happy with that. And what we said as a committee is that we were asking for a delay in bidding the project till those questions that people had could be resolved. And MassDOT is still waiting to hear from the town about the concerns and how to resolve those issues. I mean, we left it. We have concerns with the issues. I mean, I have an email from Colleen Medeiros that says, you guys, the town needs to talk to MassDOT because you have concerns about the design that haven't been resolved. How are we going to resolve the concerns with the design if we don't talk to the select board about the concerns with the design and what the select board and the bike path committee feel is a resolution? How do we talk to MassDOT about a resolution? What are the possible next steps? We've totally stopped the conversation. And I'm not sure we should be stopping the conversation. I never felt we should be stopping the conversation. I think I said at the August meeting, maybe we should be talking about just going to Monument Beach and have a connection straight to Monument Beach. We could kind of get there. Then, you know, we have more a bike path than not a bike path. I just feel that we're in a win-lose situation and we're not having conversation. And I am not comfortable with that. I think the solution is rail to trail. I think that's the best solution, but I don't think we've had any other conversation, and we've stopped the conversation. And if we continue to stop the conversation, the $5 million that is still on the tip is going to be lost. And I think we need to have a meeting with the select board to talk about next steps, not talk about disbanding this committee, because I think there's people on this committee that really still care about this project and feel that there's ways that we can make a project happen. And I am just not comfortable about where we are right now and what's happened with conversation and collaboration and working with the select board. So that I don't know how other people on the committee feel, but if that's what I'm asking. Do you feel it's worth going to the select board and saying, what were the issues we found and what do we think we should be doing to talk, and who's going to talk to MassDOT and advocate for what our concerns are? That's my question.
I agree.
Matt? Go ahead, Matt.
What would the next step be? So what do we do? Get a collaborative?
Can I jump in here?
Yeah, please go ahead, Matt. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Sorry, I'm on a hotspot connection at LAX, so if I drop out, my apologies in advance.
Okay.
But I'd like to, I agree with a lot of what MJ just said, and I'd like to add a couple more of my own points where my interpretation of where the committee arrived at in August with feedback from the Grey Gables community was that, we finally had plans that were ready to be sent to bid, so final plans from MassDOT. There were changes there that caught the committee by surprise, that the community had issues with, and I think, in sort of my opinion, that provided sort of a clarifying moment of, we have a few options ahead of us, one of them being to continue building some version of phase one option being to do nothing, one to modify a phase one to Monument Beach or something similar. But certainly a existential enough question for the project as a whole, I think that it would be appropriate to get feedback from the select board. Them being elected, we being appointed. I think it's a big enough question on where the project goes first that I think it would be valuable to get. And if the conclusion of that is disbandment and not doing anything of it, then I would be much more comfortable with that happening as a result of a measured conversation with the select board getting a full brief of where the project stands and where it could go from here. And so I would be in support of trying to get agenda time with them again, though I know that may be difficult.
Sorry, Barbara, didn't mean to interrupt you also. Did you have something else you wanted to say?
No, I just agree. And I think the plans being changed last minute was a huge thing for the Gray Gables community. And if it was to go to Monument Beach, which I'm not sure it can in that phase, then and it was just the bike path there and not taking up the whole park. And the issues with them, with the thinking, other people thinking that maybe people would be parking on their lawns or any of the issues that they kind of thought, because it was so last minute and thrown at them that they just got all the wrong ideas. So I think with more information, like that the Falmouth want to do phase 2, 3, and 4, and if we went to Monument Beach, there's some more good stuff out there and more information that would clarify some of their issues.
Tim, I'm wondering if you can just talk briefly to, how you feel about these changes they made to phase 1, and what if we decided that we were going to push forward, would that be, what would be the sort of methodology for addressing those concerns?
From what I had heard during those last changes, is because it was a terminus, you had the Complete Streets folks, you had ADA folks really take, a measured understanding of where this project was gonna stand at the end of it. So when that came through, they didn't want to have a cul-de-sac adjacent to the intersection of Presidents and Monument. So it veered off. It took up most of that park. They had the sidewalk flow onto Presidents in the direction of Mashney. And I know a lot of people are very vocal of that. People were really upset that that was going to be a place where people parked. And I just don't, in the conversation of extending this path, I think people are going to still have the same concerns of parking in that area, no matter where a perceived terminus is. But no, DOT wanted to make sure that they mapped out a terminus that ended there and could begin there. So if we wanted to bypass that, that might change. I guess I can't speak for what the people will think, but I think it changes what that design is. And then also, we really didn't do some more. We would have to do more permitting if we extended that into phase 2, based on the ACEC limits and some of the wetlands across the street.
So, but how, Tim, I may through the chair, how do we talk to MassDOT? Like MassDOT, like they send you this plan and then they say, all right, this is the plan. And how do we engage in conversation? It's very hard to engage in conversation with MassDOT, but how do we engage in conversation with MassDOT about options and why are they viewing it as a terminus, and what are the requirements that they're meeting, and what are our options for addressing those? I think that's the problem, is that there wasn't any kind of collaboration on the changes that they made. There's no understanding on our part. They just said, this is what it is, and take it or leave it. But they're still, when I talk to people about when I go to the JTC and the MPO, and they say, well, we're waiting to have conversation with the town of Bourne. How does that work?
I mean, we would have a meeting with them, and just like we had comment review meetings throughout the process, I imagine there would be another one. And this is my first TIP project. This was really my first experience in closing out a TIP project with DOT. A lot of changes came at that end. I mean, I don't think I had the amount of conversations I had with them for the first 4 years that I did for the last 4 months. So I think a lot of you guys kind of understood that already. So a lot of things changed, a lot of things happened. Um, the conversations I had had with Joe Yu and Colleen Medeiros is, hey guys, changes happen at the end all the time. And I guess, I was always we were in a position where we went to that Grey Gables meeting. I was on my heels a little bit. We went to the select board. We heard a little bit of that. I was still waiting for the town parents, I guess, for lack of a better term, to make a decision before I even got involved. So I never went and established further communication on what next steps were because I was kind of waiting for the town's decision. So I will tell you, my pencil was down in that regard. But from what I understand, DOT would want to meet again and go over that. We are through our contract with VHB. I think now is the time to let you guys remind you of that. But I do think that there should have been more of a closeout of that process or maybe a conversation to be had. And I think Linda Walsh is our project manager now. Joe Yu is no longer representing the project.
Is that who we talked to? Walsh?
I mean, I don't know what I'm talking to them about, I guess, is what I want to tell you guys. Like, as you were just as confused as you guys are, I don't want to misrepresent the town in a direction that you guys do not have a consensus on, as staff. 5 years ago, I might have meddled, but now
Right.
I do not want to step on toes.
We
and
need to go
understand.
to select board. We
Yeah.
need direction from the policy makers. We
Yeah,
need to
Tim,
make a recommendation and get direction.
Tim, I totally hear what you're saying. I want to, I don't disagree with any of you, and I think that's clearly what we should do. But I want to remind everybody that one of the things that happened when we got this, change in design was we all decided that this was a great example of why rail with trail was not going to work. And we all voted sort of again to put the brakes on this. And I think, fairly enough and smartly, we didn't say to them, we're done with rail with trail. We delayed it. And that's fine. I mean, if we were to proceed with this, and this is the best argument for going to the select board, there would have to be a change in position of the formal position that the select board and our committee has taken in the past, which is that we don't support rail with trail, we support rail to trail. And we worked a lot on those 4 phases. And when I say Falmouth has endorsed pulling up the track, they're not looking for phase 1 of rail with trail. They were convinced that the way this happens is we pull up the track, and it was thought that would be helpful ammunition for trying to convince the governor to greenlight that. So, if we go forward, one of the things that I think the select board will need to understand is that we're putting out a very different signal to people like the Falmouth Select Board when all of a sudden the town of Bourne, if it does, decides to advocate for phase 1 rail with trail again, because that hasn't been our position.
But I don't think that's what we're doing, Ken. I don't think that's
No, I don't know what
doing.
we're. I
think
don't
what
know
we're doing is going to the select board and saying we need to engage in discussion with MassDOT. Because if we don't engage in discussion with MassDOT is going to put the brakes on rail to trail. And engaging in discussion with MassDOT is the only way that we can make our case for rail to trail.
Yeah, I want to be really clear, MJ. MassDOT has no intention already of doing rail to trail. They're not moving forward on rail to trail. They're only moving forward on rail with trail, and they're only moving on forward with phase 1, right? And they're not even doing that right now. So really the question for the select board is, do you want to go back to them about further discussions on rail with trail until the governor tells MassDOT that she wants to pull the track? They're not even thinking about it because at least the Rail and Transit Division has been very clear that they're not interested in pulling up that Falmouth secondary line. So, I think you're right. but I think it's a different question for the select board. I think the question for the select board is, do you want this committee do you want Tim to continue engaging with MassDOT about a phase 1 rail with trail, or do you want to say to them, we're not doing rail with trail any phase, we only want rail to trail? It's a conversation that we had them answer once before, but I think it's reasonable to ask them to answer it again. But we shouldn't confuse them with some notion that if we go back to DOT, it's going to be to talk about rail to trail. It's not.
So could I just say something?
Sure.
The Board of Selectmen way back voted to recommend rail to trail. The Board of Selectmen voted to recommend rail to trail. The Board of Selectmen has never taken a position that that is the only way that they would proceed. And they have, in fact, gone to town meeting and advocated for the phase 1 rail project that is rail with trail.
Okay. I mean, that's fair,
So
MJ.
I think going to the select board to figure out what their actual position is and what the townspeople, give the townspeople an opportunity to attend a public meeting and at the select board to talk about that is important.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Because the select board has not taken the position that you're saying is we're only doing rail with trail. That position has never been taken.
Okay. And I also want to point out that we have a very different select board now than those several years ago when we did this. So I agree with you. I think it's reasonable to go back to the select board. But as I was talking about something slightly different, which is that I know what rail and transit's position on rail to trail is. And we shouldn't disabuse anybody with the notion that DOT is prepared to talk about that. They're not. We've tried. They're not. So that's fine. I mean, it's important we accurately represent the status quo to the board, but I'm happy to vote with you guys that we go back to the select board. I don't know what the timing for that would be. I'm not getting any pressure from DOT. I don't know if anybody else is to, resolve this delay.
The tip is going to change.
Yeah, that's true.
The tip is up. I mean, there's $5 million on the line, and
Still there.
it's up.
Right.
And so that is pressure.
Thanks, Ken. A technical question for Tim, if I might. With the town's contract with VHB being over, is there a mechanism in place for plans to be revised? Is that something that a new contract would have to be made with a consultant to rev the drawings that VHB produced, or am I mistaken and that all happens within MassDOT?
I mean, what kind of project are we looking to amend the current project? Because if that's the case, we would go back to VHB and do an amendment. But if we're looking for a whole different contract, I think we need to talk about all of that, like how we pursue all of that.
Yeah, because in my mind, just thinking about the scoping of, we've said some things of, a change order to the VHB plans would be shifting the path 6 feet one way or the other. And you mentioning permitting made me think of this. If we start talking about making Stackpole not a terminus, is that still within the realm of a change order? Or are we really looking at a different project at that point for a phase 1 equivalent?
If you're saying go to rail to trail and develop that as a rail to trail project?
No, sorry, saying that that we'd been floating sort of a thought experiment of phase 1 being rail with trail to Monument Beach, so that the terminus wasn't at Stackpole Park.
Yeah, that's a revision. That would be a change order. We would just have a new amendment to the contract for the redesign, because that would continue basically work we've already done.
Okay. Yeah, just trying to sort of gauge for my thinking of, is that, how different of a thing is that? So that is something that could be a change order. Okay, sorry, just not to detour, but appreciate sort of just the technical understanding of how that plumbing might work.
Okay. MJ, you have any sort of guess as to how long we're talking about before we're before the select board?
Well, I think you have to ask to go before the select board.
And who?
There is, I'm going to talk about, so we're meeting the 14th. Then there's the sewer commissioners, then there's town meeting. So May
Right.
12th is the earliest. I would say May 12th is the earliest, but it may be later than that. But
Okay.
if this committee feels it's important to meet with the select board, we don't necessarily have to do it in a regular meeting. And I can also ask if this committee votes to say that they want to have a meeting with the select board to talk about the future of rail, the bike path, then I can advocate for that. I don't know how much that will help. Sometimes we do meetings off schedule. So, it's a question of whether the select board feels this is an important discussion to have. And there is some pressure because the tip is on the line. So I can't answer, but I think this committee has to advocate for itself if it wants to.
Do we know what the schedule for the tip is? I mean, I thought they had recently done a new tip, so they may not be doing another revision for a while.
They'll be
And we
coming
were
for
still
public
on it.
comment on the next tip. It'll be coming. The money that's in the tip currently for FY27 will go away by the end of August. But
Okay.
it'll be in public comment in the next couple months. This is the critical time for the tip right now.
Okay.
Is when
Sounds
these
like
decisions are being
then
made.
it sounds like it's the right time for us to get more
Yes.
direction from the select board. I'll entertain a motion that we meet as soon as practical for this, given the schedule of the select board, with the select board to discuss the future of the rail trail project, specifically phase 1, which is currently in delay. Anybody want to make that motion?
I make that motion.
Thank you, Barbara. Second?
If that could be the future of the rail trail, including phase 1.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah.
No, you said something else.
I said
Primarily
future
phase
of
1.
the, oh, I see. Your
Including phase 1.
That's fine. I have no problem with that. Barbara, is that okay if we amend your motion?
Yes.
Okay. Matt, would you like to second it?
Yeah, I would second as amended.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? Okay. Barbara, vote it. Please vote.
Yes, I would like to have a meeting.
Okay. Matt,
Yes.
MJ,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. Okay. MJ, are you the person who will request that, or do I need to do that?
I think that you should make a formal request based on the vote of the committee, but I will also at our meeting tomorrow night advocate for that.
Okay. Is it protocol for my request to go to the board chair or to the town administrator?
I would do it to both.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, I don't know that we really need to take up the next couple of items. Well, we certainly don't. The discussion of the future of the committee, I would suggest that, we're in a little bit of a limbo, but I would certainly suggest that there's a cause to keep the committee in existence, at least until after we've talked to the select board. And unless anybody disagrees with that, I think there's not much danger. I mean, I don't think Marlene will move to disband the committee. She was certainly in favor of us having this meeting. And it sounds like our function is not yet up. So unless somebody disagrees, we're going to move on and not worry about future of the committee. Anybody have a problem? Okay, that takes me to the potential new committee chair discussion, since I've been thrust into this role rather inadvertently. I am certainly receptive to the idea of anyone else interested in becoming chair of this committee. I have satisfied myself that there doesn't seem to be an inherent conflict in my serving as the president of the Friends of the Bourne Rail Trail and serving as this committee chair, but I wasn't really looking for the second job. So I'm not going to put anybody on the spot, but if any of the three of you are interested in taking over the chairman's role, please let me know.
I would make a
Otherwise-
suggestion that the next time the committee meets, we have a reorganization of committee agenda item, which would allow for electing new officers for the committee, including a clerk.
Yeah.
And let's do it in that manner, not like piecemeal. So I think that would be reasonable.
Me too. I just think if anybody else is interested and willing to consider serving as chair, it would be good to let me know in advance of that meeting. Because I don't like to put people on the spot. Okay. Potential future meeting dates, I would suggest we don't really need to set one. I'm not sure it makes a lot of sense for us to meet before we meet with the select board, unless you guys want to come up with some kind of outline of what we're going to say. If we don't have an outline, I mean, I imagine I'll have something to say to the board, and I assume MJ will speak as a member of the board who's also on this committee. But I don't have a strong feeling about that. If Matt, you and Barbara, you think you would like to say something, or you would like to have a more organized approach, then we probably do need to meet before the select board. We just don't know when that is.
I would think we'd want to know when the meeting is first and then go from there.
Okay, I agree. Do we want to meet before we meet with the select board, or do we want to wait and have our next meeting afterwards? Do people feel the need, I'm asking, to have a meeting in advance of our meeting with the select board, or are we comfortable with what we're looking for?
I think I would personally like one, but I don't want, if anyone else doesn't want to. I'd like to know what we were going to talk about, but it's
okay. Well, I can't really set that meeting since I don't know when we're meeting with the select board. So I guess what we'll do is I will.
Matt might be frozen.
Beg your pardon?
I think Matt might be frozen. Well, maybe he's moving now.
Oh,
Looks
no,
like he was frozen.
sorry, I just came back.
I think you were frozen there for a while.
I hope it wasn't too weird of a face. Yeah, not to interrupt, but I would agree with Barbara that I think a meeting of this committee before going before the select board could be helpful, but tough to say not knowing when that might be. And also I'm traveling for the next 7 weeks or so I don't want to overcommit for a meeting that others might not want to have, that then I might not be able to join. So just a little caveat there. But is this an item that we could table until we find out if we can get time with the select board?
Yeah, I think we'll have to. Yes, I agree. We'll have to. MJ and I will have a good idea of when we're going before the select board, and I should have time to call a meeting of our committee before that, so we can finalize what we want to say. Okay, we'll hold off on picking any particular meeting dates. You're going to be on the other side of the world, Matt, so we're going to have the meeting in the middle of the night.
Well, I'm up the whole time, so I could probably make East Coast times work.
Okay,
That's
Alrighty.
kind. Thank you.
Okay. Any other business? I should have put that on here. Any other business? Okay. Well, then I will entertain.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, MJ. Do I have a
Seconded.
second? Matt? Okay. Barbara?
Third.
Okay. I'll take that as a yes. Matt?
Yes.
MJ?
Yes.
Okay. And I will vote yes. Okay. Very good. Well, thank you all. We'll be in touch. MJ, I'll send an email and get the process started. I assume I don't have to write a letter.
No, you can. You can send an email to Marlene
Right.
and Melissa. Saying
Okay.
that the
I will do
the
that.